Hello, everyone. Welcome to Editor Q&A with myself, Randall Searles, and Dan Pace. Dan, why don't you, well, we haven't done this in a while. Why don't you tell everyone about yourself real quick?
Absolutely, Randy. Hey, first, I'm Dan Pace. I'm a retired Special Forces guy and a current author. Just put out a new book last week, actually, called The Whale and the Kraken, kids book, and really enjoy this podcast as an opportunity to talk to people, either military writers or military interested writers, about the transition from military into writing, and then how to write successfully about military scenes. And it's good to be here. It's good to be back. We had a little bit of a break for the holidays.
Yeah, no, Happy New Year too. Yeah, we haven't talked to each other in a couple of weeks for sure. I'm Randy Searles. I'm an editor, developmental editor, book coach, ghostwriter, and I've been working in this industry for about 8 years since I left the military. And yeah, this has been great. I'm really glad you came up with this idea, Dan. Or we kind of came up with it together, I guess. But yeah, just kind of sharing our thoughts about. I meet so many people who want to write books from the military, either in the military or getting out of the military, and they don't know where to start, and they make a lot of mistakes, some of them costly. And if I can help them save money and I can help them start the right way, then this is what this is all about.
And I can speak. I mean, so not only president of Hair Club Men, but also a member. But your editing has been awesome, man. So anybody out there looking for an editor, I couldn't recommend you more. And I do a podcast with you, so that shouldn't surprise anybody, right? Obviously, I'm biased, but I just got some of your editing on the new book. It was what it'll buff out just this week. I actually went through it today, and man, your editing is just tight. It's really good. Like I have, as a writer, sometimes it can feel pretty intrusive to, like, you give your stuff to an editor, the editor's reading your stuff, he's going to tell you where you fucked up. But I love the tone of y'all's editing. It was great. You're not shy about telling me when something like doesn't kind of land well. You're like, look, man, this, you probably need to tweak it. It doesn't land well. And the feedback was all very manageable, right? It's not nebulous. Hey, seems okay, but I really don't, I'm just not comfortable. Like, no, it's pretty tight. Like, actually, this, a little more of this, a little less of this. And I liked it. It was really good feedback. It's really something I could take as a writer and apply. And I think it'll improve the quality of my work. So thanks for what you do, and encourage people to try you out.
Well, and this is the second book we looked at, and it's so much better than the first book. I actually kind of thought that would be a good topic for today, which is like, what do you attribute your writing to getting so much better? Because I wouldn't say it's night and day, but there's a huge difference. This was a lot smoother to read for both Laura and I, and and there's the report's a lot shorter. I don't know if you noticed.
Well, it's in the tone of problems. Like, ooh, I don't know if this entire story arc quite fits with the book. Is It's a lot harder to deal with than, hey, your hook here is a little weak. I feel like you probably want to do something stronger. Like, just as a writer, going in with a better product, I guess, means that you come out with one. But yeah, I'd love to talk that today, because writing's a process, and it's like shooting. You get better at it the more you do it. And I think people have the idea that you could just walk in and tell a great story, but the reality is, I mean, it's not like you're sitting on a bar stool, right? I mean, even that takes work. Even telling a good story at a bar is difficult. If you've heard anybody tell a really terrible one before, you know this. And writing is just exponentially more that way. So yeah, would love to talk about how to get better as a writer.
Um, so I've had a couple of I've worked on a couple of projects right now, and and I'd say the last 10, 8 to 10 projects I had, they all have almost the same big problem, which is their setup is so long. It's a book. Like, in some cases, like half the book is the setup. And so when they're trying to tell me what the book's about, in some cases they tell me what the book's about, and they're like talking about the two main characters or whatever, and I don't see the main characters till like halfway through the book. Like, they don't even show up, and they're like, oh, because we need all this setup. It's like, I feel like you need to start with the main characters and then fill in this backstory throughout the book. Otherwise, you're going to lose your readers because they're invested in the characters you introduced to us, and then they disappear, and you got the two main characters, and it's not just that; it's just like incredible world building in some cases of the people I'm working with, just incredible like imagination and creativity, and it's amazing, and all this, they knew everything about this world, but action, it's so long. You got a weird connection, Dan.
Yeah,
but
I did, but I'm hearing you. I'm getting you. It is a little squirrely. I don't know why.
But that's also with the nonfiction and the fiction, and it's more with the fiction. But the nonfiction, you had mentioned something. You're bringing in things that like you really need to focus on what you're trying to write about. I mean, if you're just going to write your memoir and everything that happened to you, that's one thing. But if you're actually got some kind of message that you're trying to convince your reader of, then you need to kind of look at like, hey, am I just a really, I need to put, maybe it's me too. I don't know. I blanked out as well.
It's weird. I'm getting you pretty well, but I don't know what's being recorded and what isn't, just because occasionally your text will get kind of squirrely, and I can't tell. I don't have anything open in the background. I think my connection's okay, but I never can tell.
Yeah, I never can tell. But anyway, I guess specifically you for your memoir writing, why do you think you're so much better now?
One, I'm glad to hear I'm better, because as a writer, I think you're never really sure, right? I mean, if that makes sense. Like, you don't know until your stuff lands. Like, I guess I always thought I wrote okay, and some things are received better than others, and so I guess we just assume it's not like, the problem is it's not like shooting all the way, because you don't always know if you're hitting the X. Like, you always think you're hitting X's, but you might be missing entirely, and you're not even sure of that. And I'm sure you see this way more than me as an editor, because you see people coming at it from all different angles. You're like, hey, but I hate to tell you, but you're not even on the right target. You're shooting your neighbor's target. You're way off, but people can't always tell that. To me, the biggest thing I got between the last book and this one is, it was hard when I first started out as a writer with a memoir. It's kind of the syndrome you just talked about. Like, you want to just write everything. Okay, well, if I want to jump into this story, I feel like the reader needs all this context. And so to tell the reader all that context, to, let's say I want to talk about my marriage a little bit in the Iraq book. Cool. Well, how are my readers going to know that I have a really close marriage with my wife? And your first instinct is to say, well, I need to kind of tell that story about how we became closer as a couple. And you're like, I think becoming a better writer is a realization of when to talk about a thing and when not to talk about a thing, and to find a way to gloss over a thing and imply it through other kind of text methods, right? We talk about George R.R. Martin a lot, just because Game of Thrones, it's such a huge and powerful book. But if you took that world building book that he published after all the Games of Thrones stuff was done about the entire House of Targaryen and all that, if he had published that initially, nobody would have read that shit. But you imagine that he had all of that world building in his head, and he hints and implies at a lot of the things in it through his books. And so the reader is able to jump into this world, and it's brought to life without having to just crush through this entire like chronology of the world. And memoir writing is similar. You can touch on a thing, and I like to do it with scenes. Like, my style is to write a scene and use that as the moment in time that is a snapshot of this entire thing that you want to communicate, this entire period, and then you don't have to describe it all. Like, in one case, I want to communicate that your neighbors in army housing are going to be pretty fucking weird. Like, it's a really motley crew. Show that with like one scene, maybe touch it a couple of times through the book, and then let the reader imagine what all the other neighbors in the neighborhood are doing, the crackheads and the crazy guy that steals and the cross-dresser and all that stuff. If you try to lay all of that out, it's just too much. It just becomes distracting. It distracts from the purpose of the book. But if you touch on it a little bit, you can create sort of, I guess, the illusion of depth. You can create this story of depth that the reader will kind of extrapolate without you saying anything, by just, showing these couple of highlight points. And I hope I communicated that right, but that's kind of my general approach. One day in the life can show you an entire like month of time. By just showing these series of scenes, you can communicate, what's happening without having to just go into explicit detail about it, which is just horrible to read.
I think I remember the scenes about the neighborhood perfectly, because you picked one that was super unforgettable, and you're like, whoa. And then you also you really captured the excitement of your wife when you get home. It's like, let me tell you the tea, basically. And then she skims through like, and then these guys did this and that guy did this, and then like one is became the most unforgettable moment. And then there's all these you're just snippets of all the other things that we can just imagine, because there's little pieces of like, I haven't seen those guys in like 2 months. And so I thought you captured it perfect. I mean, it could have been, so this is something that happened like when I helped Scott Mann, we were writing Operation Pineapple Express. We're like, how of the evacuation of Afghanistan. And he must have had 50 stories that we were going to interview all these people. And I'm like, whoa, how are they different? Well, they're each their own, they're each individual humans. Yeah, I get it. But like, one, forces and his family that, gets in and gets to the States. Then we need one of the same that doesn't get to the States. Okay. That's people. That's the same. We don't need those people, because we can just say there's thousands of them, and these are the two options they had. Then we have Terps. Then we have, we should have like 10 individual stories that are very different from each other to show everything that's going on, and then let their imagination of the chaos and the thousands of people trying to get in, let them just build off of that with their own imagination. Because ultimately, if you tell 50 stories and 40 of them are really similar, they're just gonna flip through it. They're gonna be bored. They won't remember all the names either. So you get even in yours, where you did a really good job making them individual. I know you were like, how do I make this guy sound different than that guy? And that's a big thing in military memoirs, because there's so many people. When you move, if you have a 20-year or a longer career, and you're moving every 2 or 3 or 4 years with new supervisors, you end up, grabbing like 100 people along the way, and you're like, you can't keep track of them all, especially if you're calling them by their ranks all the time.
No, you're 100% right. And that's what you just said can be extrapolated to lots of other things too, because characters are like that, right? You can overwhelm the reader with characters that they'll never remember. And some authors can do it, and that works for them. But for most of us, you can only throw a couple out there that you're going to develop that much, but they should be iconic. They should be characters that are, here is the kind of, shitbag that's always getting away with things. And here's the really kind of noble, cheerful dude who does this. And here's the hard ass platoon sergeant. And but scenes are like that too. Like, so with combat patrols, like the reality of at least my combat experience is most days are exactly the fucking same, right? Even an IED, how many times are you going to tell about how you hit a bomb? How many times are you going to tell how you got shot at? Unless there's a really like distinct thing or event about that given event, you try, at least the way I try, is to show repetition of patrols to capture that repetition, but change the flavor. Okay, here's one where you hit a bomb. Here's one where you have to do this meaningless traffic point. Here's one, make them, the excitement, make it the boredom, make them the I'm sick and this is horrible, make it the weird conversations, like sprinkle all that in. But, that drumbeat of patrol could be horrible to read if you don't manage to kind of add that variety at the same time. And so that, I think, is a good way to communicate repetitive events in a way that captures the repetitiveness for the reader, but in a way that the reader actually enjoys, if that makes sense. And characters are the same, right? How many hard-ass platoon sergeants can you write? I guess a lot, but at some point they all kind of blend together. So find one and follow that guy's thread, and then have the other guys play those different archetypes.
And also, I mean, you've already written this book, but I know you're going to write a third one. You identify one or two characteristics of each person that sets them apart, whether they dipped or smoked or talked with a certain accent or had a scar or whatever their unique trait was, and you just kind of latch onto that, and so the reader can picture that guy, and then you try not to they're similar, even though they may have some. You may have something like that, but one guy, the Texas accent of everyone else, a little bit that the reader can hang on to.
No, it's 100% true. And I think people with nonfiction books worry, and I worry at the same time. I still worry when I write that the people I'm writing about won't enjoy the way they're written, right? I have this fear of putting out a book and having the people who are the characters, because it's real people, hating what they write. But I have not found anyone to respond poorly to being a relatively flat character. As long as the flatness of their character still emphasizes the things yeah, that's me, right? I mean, like the guy that's always got the quip and is always getting his ass smoked. The guy doesn't mind being that guy. You don't need to write his whole life. You don't need to also write his memoir into there. He's just like, yeah, that was pretty much me. And I think that's a way you can do it in a way that you're describing, that also is true to the people in the situation, because you don't want to make shit up. I mean, it's nonfiction. We're not trying to make things up, but you could tell it in a way that's entertaining without feeling you need to flesh every character out. Like that sergeant major that comes in and knife hands and motherfucks everybody and just dicks him down. Like, he's fine with that. He knew who he was. He's a battalion sergeant major. He doesn't need you to also like flesh out his whole character. He could be flat. It's totally okay. and I've never bumped into anybody that wasn't good with that.
The other thing I thought you did really well in your book was, I mean, and I think it's a kudos to you learning from the first book, is I want to say character arc, but to Afghanistan. There, are you back? Okay, you came in as new guys into Afghanistan and reacted to getting shot at, IDs, alerts, whatever differently, and then over the time you spent there, your reaction: are we getting shot at? What is that? Oh yeah, it sounds like it's coming from there. So it's reactions to what you expected that everything's like, and then you have the middle, and then you have the end, and where people are like, I hope I don't get shot. I only got like 3 more days. You have of the mentality of the people in the platoon, which was, you captured it perfectly. I mean, you're once you publish this book, it's going to be kind of my like, hey, read this guy's book. This is how you write a memoir.
That's one. Again, I'm super glad to hear that. You never know if something's going to land, but these are the things that I did not try to do last time, because I didn't plan the book very well. So last time I just started writing and I was like, I'm going to tell this story. And so the story kind of just flows along. And then you try to stick it together at the end when you talk to an editor and you start to think about like, oh, structure. Oh yeah, character arcs. And you can cobble it together, but it's the difference between building something purpose built when you already know what you want to do, and just taking a thing you already have and like repurposing it. I mean, we've all seen that. We've all seen, people's home improvement projects where you're just like, well, I'm going to take this house and make it what I want. Like, yeah, you can, but there's still a frame there that you really can't change that much. So it's always going to look a little cobbled. And I feel that's how my first book was me telling a story that I wanted to tell and then trying to hammer it into something that was more readable. Whereas this book actually laid out a lot of the arcs. I laid out what you're talking about, that kind of, here is an idiot. He joins the army and finds out exactly how not smart he really is. Oh shit, he goes to combat, wild panic, gains experience. Oh, it becomes really routine. And then oh shit, this finally, somebody's going to eat it. Like, we are getting too close to the end of this movie. And that syndrome it's on every deployment I've ever been on, with, variants depending on how experienced the guys are. But it's a thing. And I wanted to show that. I wanted to show that arc, especially for young privates. Like, that's what joining the army was. And I want to capture that off the street and into war mentality that you read about in lots of books. But I think historically people have tended to make it too hua, too hardcore, too like, I'm a badass. And I really didn't feel like one. And so I wanted to communicate what I think a lot of people experience in the army, which is that, like, what the fuck am I doing right now? And then, oh shit, we're going to die. Like, oh, and then you get kind of good at it. And so I'm glad it landed, but that was what I was trying to show.
I don't know. I talked to Laura about this, but like, I think you nailed the promotion stuff, like the change of attitude and how you have to establish yourself. That's why many times that a lot of people probably don't know this, when you get promoted, you're taken out of that squad and put somewhere else, because otherwise you're just friends with everybody. and then it becomes tough to lead everybody, which is I wonder how. I don't understand how they do that in the civilian world. I feel like they don't. It doesn't happen as smoothly, but it just seems like. And I know I just edited another gentleman's book who had no experience in the military at all, and he wrote about Marine platoon in Iraq, and I was like, yeah, it's like, yeah, he got promoted, and the squad leader got moved to another squad to be in charge of them, and this guy got promoted to be squad leader of this squad. It's like, no, man, that doesn't happen. That guy gets moved to another squad. Why would you take the squad leader away from the squad that he's been training and working with? That makes no sense. And he's like, wow, he's just like, just like you take the guy from this sales team and that sales team. It's like, why would you move him to a new sales team if it's not up? It's just like, that makes no sense too. That's civilian world. So it just things like that. And I mean, this is what you created here. I've read a lot of memoirs. I've read a lot of people writing their memoirs for the first time, and I've also read a lot of memoirs that are published by traditional publishing and self-publishing. And I've never seen the day-by-day grunge that you've captured here. And then just a little bit, just the APs coming in and your explanation of it, and everyone waiting in line for basically nothing.
Nothing.
And you know what? No one. You can talk about that. No one has ever captured the chow halls outside of Bath and Kandahar, because they sucked in the beginning of the war. They sucked at the end of the war too. They just sucked. And no one ever captured. I never heard anyone describe piss tubes. And
that smell, that's a distinct smell.
Burning the latrines and everything like that. And we had to do it ourselves. We didn't even have Hajis when we went. And so, yeah, I've never seen anyone describe it, because most people were on just out and CAF and did ninja ops and trained people in, bases that were pretty built up. I'm not saying most people did, but the people who wrote the books did, apparently, because I haven't read too many books about the outstations so much. They were bad, especially in the beginning. They were so bad.
I love that, though. I love soldier stories. Like, if there's one thing that really drew me to memoir writing more than anything else, it's telling the story of the individuals and like what life was like, because I love to read that. I love to read old books about just what it was like to be a dude on the ground. And those, they're few and far between. Like, too many of them, not too many of them, and whatever. There's all kinds of different memoirs, but a lot of them are high level and a lot of them are very heroic, and they have to do with these really like huge set piece important things that happen. And that's important to capture. But one of the things I love about like Stephen Pressfield, for example, you read Gates of Fire, it has so many details about what it's like to be one of those guys. It's just like, here is what average Spartan spearman does with himself, and here's how he wakes up in the morning, does things. I wanted to capture that for, our generation of soldiers. Like, here's what it was like to no shit be on a FOB in Afghanistan. Here's what it's like to patrol. And I, doing that in a way that's readable is important. So I'm glad it resonated, because how do you write about a boring story where you stand in line to buy nothing without it coming across as just really boring? But I mean, that AAFES experience is super weird. Like, who the fuck does that? Like, why is that even a thing? And you look at it and you're like, I don't know, man. That's what Afghanistan was. It had just a bunch of weird shit like that happen.
Yeah, no, it was, I've tried to write about my base, but I never stayed in a base like yours. I've tried to write about an SF base, but it's so different than just a normal what you were describing. I mean, because we just had so many more advantages and more money and people working. I mean, the first time I was there, I was at a house in the middle of a city, because there were no bases, and the Air Force base at Jalalabad wasn't working. And so we had a safe house, and it was a completely different experience. You know, we had guards and we had generators, and we had people. You know, we had Afghans fixing our food, and it was just a really, really strange experience. And then when I came back 6 years later, I got 50 Afghans, carpenters and cooks and mechanics that are all from Afghanistan. I got 15 Terps that work for me, you know, and really they wash our clothes and they clean our bedrooms, and it was a totally different experience than the first one. And then before that, I went to Organi when it first opened, and it was just like yours. And that's what I thought SF was going to be like when I joined it, like an idiot. I'm like, yeah, I want to do that. I want to go out in the jungle and piss in a tube and catch weird diseases. I don't know why I thought that was cool, but that's what I thought SF was. And and I got to do that once. I got to do that once in South America, in Honduras, which was like it was just like a fire base in the middle of Afghanistan. It was, and I was like, this is it. This is SF. And I never experienced that again, ever, because it was always a little bit higher quality of condition. And then when I got to Afghanistan, when I first got there, it was like that. And then every year I went back, it was like a little bit better, a little bit better. So we're leaving with, you know, coffee cups and Burger King.
It's true.
But
it's true.
People in the Army don't even remember how bad it was, because the guys that are in the Army now weren't even there when it was that bad.
No, that's the thing. Afghanistan was a sideshow until, you know, Iraq was close to ending, and way more people went to Iraq. So I think a lot of the early war memoirs tended to be either straight up 2001 invasion, which is its own kind of thing, and then you skip over to Iraq for the Iraq invasion through, you know, the end of that war in like 09-ish, and Iraq was way more built up. So it's not like you couldn't have any kind of shitty sidelines fob life, but for the most part, you lived better in Iraq than Afghanistan. And then by the time everybody transitioned to Afghanistan, obviously a lot more soldiers were out, and then you saw the quality of life appear because there's just a shitload more stuff and resources. All that stuff from Iraq moved over. But there was that slice there were only like 10,000 people in country between the invasion and, I don't know, probably like 06, maybe. I might be a little off on that backstop, when there weren't that many people there and nobody gave a fuck about it. And logistically, it's hard to get things there. And so it wasn't ever a question of like, hey, what do we need to make this better? It was just like, what can we do with what we got? Because you're not getting anything else. And so you're just you in the middle of nowhere with your 26 friends trying to figure out how to make life somewhat sustainable.
We're going to try to get this Hummer up to the top of the hill. Someone told us to put it up there.
Oh my gosh. So the one thing, I mean, that's another thing I wanted to capture about being a private is how many tasks are done, one, because somebody just told you to, and you do not feel comfortable enough asking for context because you know they'll just jump your shit. It's like, I'm not going to ask him for any information. I'll just do what he said, even though it's retarded, even though what he said makes no sense. And the second one is how many things you do are driven by just sheer pursuit of laziness and comfort. Like, I just don't want to do something that's hard or uncomfortable because everything in my life is. So we'll just kind of make it work. And and I wanted to capture that part of being a private because I always felt like I was on the dodge. I was like Beetle Bailey, like always trying to dodge Big Sarge coming down to screw my shit up. How do we make this just a little more manageable? And that's what being a private felt like to me.
I think you did a great job. I've read so many books that were written. I mean, so the funny thing is, you had a college education and you joined and you became a private, and then made your way up to an NCO, and then you got out and became an officer. But I've read so many, like, they're not even memoirs, they're fictional, historical fiction in some cases, Yellowbirds and things like that. I don't know if you've read them or not. And it's always, what's that?
I have read the Yellowbird. I have read that. Oh. Not a fan.
I hated it. Yeah, but it's all this literary fiction that the critics loved, and it's about, yeah, I was a private, I was smarter than everyone else, no one listened to me, and life sucked. Well, of course life sucked. It's freaking Army, man. And he just whined the whole time. Like when I wrote my thesis for my MFA, I had to talk to my thesis advisor, and he's like, "What do you want to?" He made me read all these critically military, and I said, "I don't want any, this is." I was like, "Yeah, but it's baloney." Like, I mean, those like the people we beat up. I mean, they whine all the time. I don't mean. I'm not trying to cut off here, but basically, shut up and do your job and quit whining. And I hate those books because I hated those people.
Yeah, it's like I guess I try to be generous and say, well, it wasn't my lived experience. But I take basically a different angle on, I think, the same raw material, right? Like I was that smarmy college kid that came in thinking I was smarter than everybody else. And my experience was that the Army taught me exactly how dumb I actually was. Like, you think you're smart. A lot of shit you think you're smart on is not in any way applicable to the real world. And here's the real world, by the way. And that dumb motherfucker that you think you're so smart, that guy's way better at his job than you. And he's going to show you how to do it. And you're like, ah. And I found it very humbling. And so I have a hard time empathizing with the people that came in like, I'm smarter than everyone, and then actually continued to believe that, and then got out and still thought after all that context that they were smarter than everyone. Like, didn't you ever have a moment where you're like, it's me, I am the idiot, I got to shut the fuck up and stop thinking I'm smart and just
No, they never did. They didn't though. That's the thing. I came in, I had like a year and a half of college, but I basically flunked out of college. But I could never get rid of like, hey, college boy, come here. I was like, college boy, I flunked out of college. I really literally have like no more college than you do, except I paid money for it. So that's dumber than you. And you're like, college boy, shut up.
Yes.
So, yeah.
Yes.
You did it. But Dan, I'll just say one more time, you did a great job. Really enjoyed reading it, and I'm glad the edits helped, and I look forward to reading the actual book and getting the signed copy sent to my address, which is, by the way, no.
Yeah, you 100% will. 100%. I love the feedback. It's spot on. There are sections of the book that sending it to you, I knew that I wasn't 100% comfortable with. Like I don't know why, but I'm not comfortable with how this is coming off. And hey, man, you gave me the feedback on like, this is why, and this is what you need to tighten up. And I like it. So I got to obviously spend a couple of weeks churning through that. I got to get Alicia's last letters done because my wife wrote, she's rewriting the letters that I kind of drafted out of our old letters. So I pulled all our old letters out. I read them all. And then we're taking basically snippets of those letters and consolidating them into letters to insert into the text so that you can keep touch with what's going on at home and just get that like Army flavor of wife. I wasn't sure to build that arc in, but I think the letters actually are going to work pretty well. And so we got to finish those letters.
We tried to do this with the last one, but we came up with a timeline and some other problems. But I thought the letters were awesome in this. I thought the setup I was trying to explain this problem to the other guy who has experience about, because he's just like calling home. It's like there's no calling home. There's waiting in long lines to use a phone for 10 minutes that no one answers because you're calling at 4 o'clock in the morning or you're calling at 12 o'clock in the afternoon or whatever. And just like your wife said, I'm getting cell phones had just come out when she's like, I gotta get a cell phone because I feel so bad I missed your calls. And people don't realize I couldn't FaceTime back then. There was no smartphones, and it's really hard to explain to people about all these things.
Because it's a period piece now, right? Like that's one of the weirdest things about writing this was realizing that it is now a period story. Like I just finished a memoir about somebody in the Mexican-American War, and you read about a lot of the little lifestyle stuff in there. And that's one of the most fun parts about reading it is like, oh man, he's talking about giving his whiskey to his horse. And he's talking about what it was like to just get up in the morning and take care of a horse. Like, Randy, our early career shit is now period. Like when you read it, you're like, nobody has a fucking gas burning stove in a tent with no phone anymore. That shit doesn't exist. It doesn't exist anymore. Like, I may as well be writing about the 1800s. Oh, it's crazy.
Well, and I came in 13 years before you did. So in fact, I'm having like flashbacks of Noriega with the Venezuela thing that just happened. I mean, it's pretty much the same reason we went to get Noriega, but it took us like 30 times longer to get out of. Well, I mean, I think the Panama War was considered over after about 2 weeks, but we stuck around for a while, and we landed people on the ground. We didn't just go in and take them and leave.
This was a weird one.
I wonder if we would have.
We could talk a whole, if you could have.
Yeah, we
could do a whole show on that one, but I don't even know if we're at war. Like, we just kidnapped the president. What happened? I don't know. I actually don't know what the implications of that are, but it was so fast that it's unclear where it's going.
Politics. I do politics. Hey, I think we should end because the connection is not great, and hope for a better one next time. And so we did. I think this is a good talk on writing memoirs and getting better at writing, and just kind of making a plan. I think that's all good stuff for anybody who wants to listen to this.
Yeah, for sure. And I mean, we can obviously expand on this later, but love the feedback. It's fun to have that project. I say finished, but there's so much left in the post editing and publication process. But we could talk that next time. If you want to talk about the Whale and the Kraken and getting all that out and the Kickstarter. Oh, there's just so much that goes into it.
I wanted to get in the Whale and the Kraken one, but I just think that they wouldn't do you any service because the internet's so bad for some reason. I got a bad storm here. It might be that. So let's just sign off. Hey, thanks for joining us, guys, and join us next week, and hopefully we'll have a better stream then.
Hey, take care, Randy. It was good talking to you, man.
Boom.